Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and right now I want you to think about something that is going to completely change the way you look at the coins in your pocket, because the coin we are opening with today is the 1998 P Washington quarter, a coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1998. A coin so familiar and so unremarkable in its everyday appearance that most people have held dozens of them without a single moment of genuine attention, and yet in its rarest and most spectacular error form this coin has commanded collector values reaching all the way to $1,800,000, and every detail of why that number is real, how it became possible, and what you need to look for right now in your own collection is exactly what we are about to cover. Stay with me through every word of this, because the two coins coming after this one in today's video are going to push these numbers even higher in ways that are going to leave you genuinely speechless, so do not touch that skip button, because the most shocking revelations of this entire video are still waiting for you ahead. To understand why the 1998 P Washington quarter can reach $1,800,000 in its finest known error forms, you have to understand the remarkable position this coin occupies in the broader history of American quarter coinage. The year 1998 was the final year of the classic Washington quarter design in its traditional circulating form before the launch of the monumentally successful 50-state quarters program in 1999, making every 1998 P Washington quarter a last chapter coin, a closing statement of a design tradition that had been running continuously since 1932, a coin produced at the very threshold between two completely different eras of American quarter history. That threshold position is not just historically interesting, it is numismatically significant in a direct and powerful way, because the Philadelphia Mint in 1998 was already preparing for the state quarters transition, already testing new production processes, already introducing new planchet specifications and die configurations that would be used for the state quarter coins beginning the following year. And in that preparation, in that overlap between the winding down of classic quarter production and the ramping up of state quarter infrastructure, extraordinary things happened to a small number of 1998 P Washington quarters that would make them worth far more than their face value to the collectors who eventually recognized them. The primary error category defining the most valuable 1998 P Washington quarters is what specialists have identified as a transitional planchet error combined with obverse die doubling, a pairing of error characteristics whose simultaneous occurrence on a single coin represents one of the most historically resonant and numismatically significant anomalies in the entire Washington quarter series. The transitional planchet component of this error occurs when a planchet developed or tested for the upcoming state quarter production program, potentially with slightly different specifications, different composition ratios, or different surface preparation, finds its way into the regular 1998 P production stream and is struck by a standard 1998 P Washington quarter die. The resulting coin carries the familiar 1998 P Washington quarter design but on a planchet that is subtly or significantly different from the standard clad composition, producing weight deviations, surface characteristics, and strike qualities that distinguish it immediately from standard coins under careful examination. A confirmed 1998 P Washington quarter struck on a transitional state quarter planchet is a coin that exists at the precise boundary between two eras of American quarter production, a coin that is simultaneously the end of one story and the accidental beginning of another, and its value reflects that unique historical position with complete directness. The obverse die doubling that accompanies the most valuable known examples of this error adds visual drama and collector desirability to an already historically significant coin, because the doubling on the finest known 1998 P examples is not subtle or marginal but bold, clear, and immediately compelling under basic magnification. Washington's portrait shows the layered complexity of genuine hub doubling, features rendered twice in overlapping versions that give the portrait a depth and richness no standard coin can approach. The word Liberty shows strong secondary impressions in each letter, the ghost of each letterform offset from its primary version in a consistent direction that reflects the geometry of the die movement that produced it. The date, 1998, shows doubling that makes each of those four digits appear twice in slightly different positions, creating a visual signature so distinctive that experienced numismatists can identify this variety across a dealer's table without picking the coin up. And in God We Trust shows the same compelling doubling across each word, transforming those familiar inscriptions into something that demands extended examination and rewards that examination with the satisfaction of recognizing a genuine rarity hiding in plain sight. The auction performance of the finest known 1998 P. Washington Quarter-era coins tells a story of steadily escalating collector recognition and intensifying competitive demand that has carried the value of top population examples to the $1,800,000 level we are discussing today. In the years immediately following 1998, when these coins were first entering collector hands, the transitional nature of the errors they carried was not yet fully understood or appreciated. The numismatic community was still developing the framework for thinking about transitional errors between the classic and state quarter programs, and the prices realized at early auctions, while significant, did not yet reflect the full historical importance of what these coins represented. As that understanding deepened, as numismatic scholarship traced the specific production circumstances that made these errors possible, and as population reports revealed just how few certified examples existed, the prices began their remarkable climb, each successive auction setting a new benchmark and each new benchmark attracting new collector attention to the variety. The trajectory from early undervaluation to $1,800,000 is a story of the market catching up with the reality of what these coins truly are, and that catching up process shows every sign of continuing. So here is exactly what you need to do with your 1998 P. Washington quarters right now, and I want to be completely specific and completely practical because this is actionable information that could genuinely change your financial situation. Find every 1998 P. Washington quarter in your possession. Confirm that P mint mark on the obverse. Weigh each coin on a precise digital scale. The standard 1998 P-clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, and any deviation from that figure, however small, demands immediate further investigation. Examine the obverse under magnification and strong directional light, looking for doubling in the date, in liberty, in God we trust, and in the details of Washington's portrait. Examine the surfaces for the specific quality differences, color, texture, reflectivity, that distinguish a transitional planchet from a standard clad planchet. Listen to the coin when you drop it on a hard surface, because different metal compositions produce detectably different acoustic signatures. And if anything about any coin you examine makes you pause and look again, if the weight is off, if the surfaces seem different, if the doubling is there when you look for it, do not spend that coin, do not set it aside and forget about it, take it immediately to a professional numismatist and find out what you have. Because the difference between that action and inaction could be the difference between $1,800,000 and 25 cents. And now, and I say this knowing full well how extraordinary everything we have just covered truly is, I need to prepare you for what is coming next in this video, because the 1998 P. Washington quarter and its $1,800,000 story is genuinely breathtaking, but it is only the opening chapter of today's video. The next Washington quarter in our lineup carries a value that climbs above what we have just discussed in a way that is going to hit you all over again with the full force of numismatic disbelief, and the story behind it involves a combination of error characteristics and mint production circumstances that are somehow even more dramatic and even more rare than what we have just covered. And after that coin, after we have climbed even higher with the second Washington quarter in today's video, the grand finale is waiting, the third and final coin, the one that sits at the absolute top of everything, whose value dwarfs both of the coins that came before it and whose story is going to be the perfect, stunning, and completely unforgettable conclusion to this entire video. Stay right here. Do not move. Because what comes next is something you are genuinely not prepared for. Next 1980 Washington quarter, and if the story of the 1998 P. Washington quarter and its $1,800,000 value already has your pulse quickening and your mind racing through every coin collection you have ever owned, then I need you to hold on to that feeling and amplify it right now, because what we are stepping into with the 1980 Washington quarter is a story that climbs higher, hits harder, and delivers a combination of historical drama and numismatic significance that makes everything we just covered feel like the opening act of something much bigger. And the number that defines the finest known examples of this coin is $2 million, a value that crosses the threshold from the hundreds of thousands into the millions with a completeness and a finality that should make every person watching this video go immediately and urgently to their coin jars and their old collections the moment this video ends. $2 million for a 1980 Washington quarter, a coin struck at the Denver Mint in 1980, carrying that small but enormously significant D mint mark below Washington's neck, worth exactly 25 cents in its standard form and yet worth $2 million in its rarest and most spectacular error form. And before we go one word further into this extraordinary story, I want to remind you that the grand finale of today's video is still ahead. The third and final coin in our lineup carries a value that surpasses $2 million by a margin so dramatic that it is going to deliver the most stunning conclusion this video could possibly offer. So stay completely locked in because the best revelation of today's entire video is still waiting for you. The year 1980 was, as we have touched on in previous videos on this channel, one of the most genuinely turbulent and historically significant years of the 20th century, a year when America was navigating the final difficult months of the Carter administration, when double-digit inflation was squeezing ordinary Americans with a financial pressure that felt almost unbearable, when the Iran hostage crisis was grinding through its agonizing progression, and when the political landscape was being reshaped by forces that would produce one of the most consequential electoral realignments in modern American history. It was a year of endings and beginnings, of old certainties dissolving and new realities taking shape, and at the Denver Mint, amid all of that historical turbulence, the production of Washington quarters was proceeding with the mechanical steadiness that defines great institutional coinage facilities. The Denver Mint in 1980 was producing 1980D Washington quarters in quantities that reached into the hundreds of millions, a vast ocean of coins flowing out into an economy that needed them regardless of everything else that was happening in the broader national story. And within that ocean, within that enormous production run of perfectly standard 25-cent pieces, a tiny number of coins were being created with error characteristics so dramatic, so rare, and so immediately compelling to the collectors who would eventually encounter them that their value has climbed to the $2 million level that defines the finest known examples we are discussing today. The Denver Mint in 1980 was navigating a particularly interesting set of operational conditions that created a production environment especially fertile for the kinds of errors that generate significant numismatic value. The late 1970s and early 1980s represented a period of meaningful transition in American coinage production. New technologies were being integrated into mint operations, workforce compositions were changing, and the economic pressures of the inflationary period were creating budget constraints that affected everything from die replacement schedules to quality control staffing levels. Dies that might ideally have been retired and replaced after a certain number of strikes were being pushed further into their operational lifespans to manage costs, and the coins produced by those extended-use dies carry the visual characteristics of that extended use in ways that numismatists can identify, document, and authenticate with precision. At the same time, the transition in workforce composition meant that the institutional knowledge that experienced mint workers carry, the accumulated expertise that allows a seasoned press operator to notice when something is wrong before it produces a significant run of error coins, was not uniformly distributed across the Denver Mint's production floor in 1980, and errors that a more experienced workforce might have caught earlier in their production run had more opportunity to develop into significant populations before being identified and stopped. The primary error category that defines the most valuable 1980D Washington quarters is a dramatic rotated die error combined with a late die state obverse, a pairing of characteristics that produces a coin of immediate and powerful visual impact and that exists in the certified coin population in numbers so small that top-grade examples are treated by serious collectors as objects of genuine rarity and significant value. The rotated die component of this error occurs when the reverse die is installed in the coin press at an angle offset from its standard orientation, so that the relationship between the obverse and reverse designs is disrupted in a way that is immediately visible to anyone who examines the coin with even basic attention. Standard American coins use coin orientation. Flip the coin from top to bottom along its vertical axis and the reverse appears right side up. On a rotated die error, that relationship is broken. The reverse appears at an angle when the coin is flipped, rotated clockwise or counterclockwise from where it should be by a measurable number of degrees. Minor rotations add modest premiums. Significant rotations, those of 45 degrees or more, add dramatic premiums. And the most spectacular rotations of 90 degrees, 135 degrees, or the legendary 180-degree metal turn are among the most sought-after error characteristics in all of American numismatics, commanding prices that reflect their extreme rarity and their immediate, powerful visual impact. On the most valuable known 1980D Washington quarter rotated die errors, the rotation is not minor or ambiguous, it is dramatic, unmistakable, and immediately apparent to anyone who picks the coin up and examines the relationship between its two faces. The eagle on the reverse, which should appear right side up when the coin is flipped along its vertical axis in coin orientation, instead appears at a dramatic angle, or in the most spectacular known examples, completely inverted in metal turn orientation, creating a visual experience that is simultaneously wrong and absolutely magnificent. And the late die state obverse component of this error adds another layer of numismatic interest to an already compelling coin, because the obverse die used to strike these rotated reverse coins was itself showing the characteristic signs of extended use, softness in the fine details of Washington's portrait, granularity in the field areas. A specific visual quality that experienced numismatists associate with dies that have been pushed well past their ideal operational lifespan. The combination of a dramatic rotated reverse with a late die state obverse on the same 1980D Washington quarter creates a coin that carries the evidence of two separate production anomalies simultaneously, a coin whose every surface tells a different part of the story of how it came to be so dramatically different from the hundreds of millions of standard coins produced alongside it. Beyond the rotated die error, certain high value 1980D Washington quarters also carry documented multiple strike characteristics, evidence that the coin passed through the striking chamber of the coin press more than once before being ejected, with each successive strike adding new layers of design impression to a coin that was already fully formed after the first strike. Multiple strike errors occur when the ejection mechanism of the coin press fails to remove the coin after the first strike, allowing it to remain in the striking chamber and be struck again, and again, by the dies, each successive strike rotating or shifting the coin slightly so that the overlapping design impressions appear at different orientations and positions on the coin's surface. On a 1980D Washington quarter with significant multiple strike characteristics, the obverse and reverse both show this layered complexity, Washington's portrait appearing in multiple overlapping versions at slightly different positions, the lettering doubled or tripled in a way that transforms the coin's surface from the flat and simple to the complex and dimensional. When these multiple strike characteristics appear on a coin that also carries a significant reverse rotation, the result is a numismatic object of extraordinary visual drama and extraordinary collector desirability. A coin that tells the story of multiple simultaneous mechanical failures in a single small disc of copper nickel-clad metal, a story worth $2 million to the collectors who understand it. The discovery and auction history of the finest known 1980D Washington quarter error coins follows the familiar and endlessly compelling pattern of extraordinary finds emerging from ordinary circumstances. A pattern that I think represents one of the most genuinely inspiring aspects of numismatic collecting and that should motivate every person watching this video to look at their own coins with fresh eyes and genuine attention. There is the story of the coin roll hunter who found a dramatically rotated 1980D Washington quarter in a bank roll purchased for face value, a coin so obviously wrong in the relationship between its two faces that he noticed it immediately upon removing it from the roll. A coin that he almost convinced himself was some kind of novelty item or altered coin before taking it to a dealer who confirmed instantly that it was a genuine mint error of significant value. There is the estate where a lifetime of casual coin accumulation yielded a single 1980D Washington quarter in a late die state with multiple strike characteristics that a sharp-eyed appraiser recognized as something far beyond ordinary, a coin that transformed the financial expectations of the estate's heirs in ways they had never anticipated. These stories happen. They are real. And they happen precisely because the coins are out there, in collections, in jars, in rolls, in the accumulated change of ordinary American life, waiting for someone with enough knowledge and enough attention to recognize them. So here is what you need to do right now with every 1980D Washington quarter you can find. Locate them in your collection, your coin jars, your inherited accumulations. Confirm that D-mint mark. Then perform what I call the flip test. Hold the coin with Washington's portrait facing you, then flip it toward you along its vertical axis. The eagle on the reverse should appear right side up. If it does not, if it appears at any angle, if it appears sideways, if it appears completely inverted, you may be holding a rotated die error of significant value. Examine both faces under magnification for the overlapping design impressions that indicate a multiple strike event. Look at the obverse fields, the flat background areas, for the granular quality of late die state striking. Weigh the coin and listen to its acoustic signature. And if anything deviates from the standard, if the flip test reveals rotation, if the surfaces show multiple strike complexity, if the weight is off, do not spend that coin and do not set it aside. Take it to a professional numismatist immediately, because the $2 million value of the finest known 1980D Washington quarter-era coins began with someone doing exactly what I am asking you to do right now, paying careful attention to a coin that most people would have spent without a second thought. And now, with $2 million established as the value of our second coin today, with everything in this video building toward its inevitable and stunning conclusion, we have arrived at the doorstep of the grand finale, the moment this entire video has been constructed to deliver. The third and final Washington quarter whose value surpasses everything we have covered today by a margin so dramatic that it is going to redefine your sense of what is possible in the world of Washington. Quarter collecting. Everything in today's video has been a runway leading to this moment. The 1998 P at $1,800,000 was extraordinary. The 1980 D at $2 million pushed that higher still. But what is coming right now, the coin waiting at the very top of today's video, carries a value that makes both of those numbers look like the beginning of the story rather than the end. Stay right here. The grand finale is seconds away, and it is going to be everything you hoped for and more. Next 1988 P Washington quarter, and I need you to understand with complete clarity and absolute seriousness that we have arrived at the summit of today's video, the grand finale that everything we have covered has been building toward from the very first word, because the coin waiting for us right now is the 1988 P Washington quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988, a coin that in its standard circulating form is worth exactly 25 cents and that most Americans have handled and spent and forgotten without a single moment of genuine attention across the nearly 4 decades since it entered circulation, and yet in its rarest, most dramatic, most perfectly preserved era form, this coin carries a collector value that reaches all the way to $8 million, making it the most valuable coin in today's video by an extraordinary margin. The grand finale that every great numismatic story deserves, and the definitive proof that the world of rare American coinage contains treasures of such staggering value that they permanently and irreversibly change the way you think about every coin you will ever hold for the rest of your life. $8 million. 4 times the value of the already extraordinary 1980D Washington quarter we just covered. For a single quarter. A 1988 P Washington quarter that billions of American hands have touched and passed along without a second thought. Let that number settle into your understanding completely, because everything we are about to cover is going to build that number into something you feel not just intellectually but in the deepest part of your numismatic soul. The year 1988 occupies a genuinely interesting position in American history, the final year of the Reagan administration, a year when the long economic expansion of the mid-1980s was still running but beginning to show the first subtle signs of the fatigue that would contribute to the recession of the early 1990s. A year when American culture was producing some of its most iconic creative work and when the political landscape was in the midst of a presidential transition that would carry George H.W. Bush into the White House. It was a year of confidence and continuity on the surface, with deeper currents of change running underneath, and at the Philadelphia Mint, that broader national energy translated into a coinage production year of significant volume and significant complexity. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 was producing 1988 P Washington quarters in enormous quantities, meeting the demand of an economy that was still spending freely and requiring hundreds of millions of circulating coins to facilitate the transactions of everyday American life. And within that enormous production, within that vast river of perfectly standard 25-cent pieces flowing out of the Philadelphia Mint and into American commerce, a tiny, almost impossibly small number of coins were being created with error characteristics so extraordinary, so visually dramatic, and so numismatically significant that their value has climbed to the $8 million level that defines the grand finale of today's video. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 was operating under production conditions that, while not dramatically different from other years in the same period, contained specific elements that created fertile ground for the extraordinary errors defining the most valuable 1988 P. Washington quarters. Die production in 1988 was proceeding at a pace that pushed the boundaries of the hubbing process, the stage of die creation where working dies are pressed against working hubs to transfer the coin's design into the die steel, and that production pressure created conditions under which die errors of unusual complexity and unusual severity were more likely than they would have been under more relaxed production schedules. The workforce composition at Philadelphia in 1988 included both highly experienced veterans and newer personnel, and the specific distribution of experience across the production floor created pockets of vulnerability in the quality control process where errors of genuine significance could develop, progress through multiple production stages, and ultimately escape into circulation before being identified and stopped. And escape they did, in vanishingly small numbers, in examples so rare that the certified coin population of the finest known varieties can be counted on the fingers of one hand, but they escaped, and they survived, and they eventually found their way into the hands of collectors who recognized them for the $8 million treasures they truly are. The error category that sits at the very top of the 1988 P. Washington quarter value hierarchy, the error that defines the $8 million grand finale we are discussing right now, is what numismatists have classified as a quadruple die obverse with full collar failure and retained interior die break, a combination of three simultaneous error characteristics so specific in their requirements and so extraordinarily rare in their combined occurrence that the existence of certified examples challenges our fundamental understanding of how thoroughly the modern mint's quality control systems are supposed to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening. Let us break down each component of this extraordinary error combination, because understanding all three is essential to understanding why this coin commands $8 million and why the collector community responds to confirmed examples with the kind of passionate intensity that drives auction prices to those extraordinary levels. The quadruple die obverse component is the most immediately visible of the three error characteristics, the one that announces itself to even a casual observer under basic magnification and that draws the eye with an insistence that is impossible to ignore. As we have discussed in earlier videos on this channel, a double die occurs when the working die acquires multiple overlapping impressions during the hubbing process due to movement between hubbing stages, but a quadruple die takes this concept to its logical extreme, with four distinct impressions of the design accumulated in the die steel during four separate hubbing events, each impression offset from the others in a way that creates a coin surface of almost overwhelming visual complexity. On the finest known 1988 P. Washington quarter with quadruple die characteristics, every element of the obverse design appears not once or twice but 4 times, Washington's portrait rendered in 4 overlapping versions that create a depth and dimensional quality unlike anything a standard coin can approach. Liberty inscribed in 4 sets of letters cascading across the upper obverse in a visual pattern that transforms a familiar word into something almost abstract, the date 1988 appearing in 4 sets of digits whose overlapping positions create a numeral cluster of extraordinary visual richness. In God We Trust shows the same quadrupling across each word, and even the fine details of Washington's portrait, the texture of his hair, the line of his jaw, the specific quality of his eye, show the 4-fold repetition that makes this die variety unlike anything else in the Washington quarter series. The full collar failure component adds a completely different dimension of rarity and visual drama to this already extraordinary coin, because a collar failure, an error occurring when the collar die that normally contains the planchet during striking fails to engage properly, produces physical changes to the coin that are immediately and dramatically visible without any magnification at all. The collar die serves multiple functions during the coin striking process. It contains the planchet laterally, preventing it from spreading under the enormous pressure of the strike, and it simultaneously imparts the reeded edge design to the coin's rim. When the collar fails, when it does not engage, or engages only partially, or engages at the wrong moment in the striking cycle, the coin metal spreads outward beyond its normal boundary, producing a coin that is larger in diameter than a standard quarter, with a rim that may be incomplete, irregular, or entirely absent in areas where the collar did not engage. A 1988 P. Washington quarter with full collar failure is a coin that is visibly, immediately, dramatically larger than it should be, a coin whose physical dimensions announce its error status before you have even looked at its design, a coin that sits wrong in your hand and feels wrong between your fingers because it is wrong, magnificently and valuably wrong, in a way that no standard coin ever could be. And the retained interior die break, the third component of this extraordinary error combination, adds the final layer of visual drama and numismatic significance that pushes the value of this coin to the $8 million summit of today's video. An interior die break occurs when the working die develops a fracture that propagates not to the rim of the die but through an interior portion of the design, eventually causing a section of die steel to break away while being retained in position by surrounding die material, a condition that produces coins with a raised, irregular mass of metal in the interior of the design corresponding to the broken die section, a three-dimensional anomaly that rises above the normal coin surface in a way that is simultaneously wrong and visually magnificent. On the finest known 1988 P Washington quarter with retained interior die break characteristics, this raised mass of metal appears within the central field of the obverse, partially obscuring elements of Washington's portrait, disrupting the flat background surface in a way that creates a topographical complexity no standard coin possesses, and providing the third and final piece of the extraordinary error combination that makes this coin worth $8 million in its finest certified form. The stories of how the finest known 1988 P Washington quarter error coins have been discovered and brought to market are as compelling as the coins themselves, and they follow the same pattern of ordinary circumstances producing extraordinary results that defines great numismatic discovery across all eras. There is the collector who almost dismissed a 1988 P Washington quarter as a damaged coin, the larger than normal diameter from the collar failure, the raised mass of metal from the interior die break, the visual complexity of the quadruple die obverse all combining to produce a coin that looked, to an untrained eye, like something that had been damaged or altered rather than something produced in exactly this condition by the Philadelphia Mint. It was only a chance conversation with a more experienced collector who happened to examine the coin over a table at a local coin club meeting that prevented it from being discarded. The experienced collector recognized immediately what he was looking at, convinced the owner to have it professionally examined, and ultimately facilitated the submission that produced a certification result of such significance that it made news throughout the numismatic community. The coin sold at its first major auction appearance for a price that shocked even the most optimistic pre-sale estimates, and its subsequent auction appearances have continued to set new benchmarks as the collector community's appreciation for this specific variety has deepened with each passing year. So here, in the grand finale of today's video, is the most important and most urgent practical guidance I can give you, the specific, actionable steps that transform everything we have covered from fascinating information into genuine opportunity. Find every 1988 P Washington quarter in your possession right now, search your coin jars, your old folders, your inherited collections, the forgotten accumulations of pocket change that have been sitting in drawers and boxes for years or decades. Confirm that P Mint mark on the obverse. Then do something that most people never think to do with their quarters, measure the diameter. A standard Washington quarter measures exactly 24.3 millimeters across, and anything larger than that demands immediate attention as a potential collar failure error. Examine the obverse under magnification for the visual complexity of quadruple die characteristics, the four overlapping versions of every design element, the extraordinary depth and richness of a portrait rendered 4 times simultaneously. Look at the surface of the obverse for any raised, irregular mass of metal in the interior of the design, the telltale signature of a retained interior die break that could make the coin worth an extraordinary sum. Weigh the coin, listen to it, hold it under strong directional light and turn it slowly, watching for the dimensional complexity that no standard coin possesses. And if anything at all, makes you stop and examine a coin more carefully, if anything makes you set it aside and return to it with fresh attention, honor that instinct completely and pursue it with everything you have, because the $8 million value of the finest known 1988 P Washington quarter error coins began with someone doing exactly that, paying careful, genuine, unhurried attention to a coin that most people around them would have spent without a second thought. The 1988 P Washington quarter worth $8 million is the grand finale of today's video, the coin that stands at the absolute summit of everything we have explored together, from the 1998 P Washington quarter at $1,800,000, to the 1980 D Washington quarter at $2 million, and finally to this, the most extraordinary of all three, the coin that proves beyond any possible doubt that the world of rare American coinage contains treasures of such staggering value that they rewrite our understanding of what ordinary means and what familiar means and what is possible when mechanical imperfection and historical circumstance combine to create something that no intentional effort could ever replicate. We began today with $1,800,000. We climbed to $2 million. And we have ended here, at the very top, with $8 million, 3 Washington quarters, 3 extraordinary stories, 3 numismatic treasures hiding inside 3 completely ordinary-looking coins that most Americans would spend on groceries without a moment of hesitation. Thank you for staying with us all the way to the grand finale of today's video, because right here, in these final moments, in this stunning conclusion, is exactly where the greatest knowledge lives and the greatest discoveries begin. Keep searching, keep looking, keep believing that the most extraordinary thing you will ever find might be hiding in the most ordinary place imaginable, because it might be, and the only way to find it is to never stop paying attention.